Good morning, everyone. I'm Tremaine Wright, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Is everyone able to hear? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. And it's a pleasure to have all of you here with us today. Recognizing that we have a majority of the board members present, I'm pleased to call to order another meeting of the Cannabis Control Board and to welcome all of you who are participating in person or via a live stream. I'd like to note that board member Adam Perry is participating from a publicly accessible location in Buffalo, and board member Jessica Garcia is joining us via live stream from a private location due to extraordinary circumstances. Today's agenda includes welcome and opening remarks, approval of meeting minutes from April 11th, 2024's board meeting, consideration of adult use cannabis licenses for approval, two considerations of adult use cannabis licenses for denial, consideration of the withdrawal and approval of emergency enforcement regulations, consideration of card provisional license extension, a consideration of registered organization dispensing facility requests, a consideration of supplemental policy guidance for the review of adult use applications from the October 2023 application window, a report from our executive director, public comments, and then the board will adjourn. As you can see from today's agenda, we will consider a number of significant steps designed to enhance our state's cannabis regulatory, licensing, and enforcement framework. We have heard the comments and read your emails. We understand and appreciate the need to streamline and expedite our processes. We are committed to developing a system that provides clarity and reliability as well as adaptability. The initiatives before us today provide an opportunity to bolster the success of entrepreneurs in the market. And the number of New York State cannabis entrepreneurs continues to grow. Our state now boasts over 120 operational cannabis dispensaries. Our licensing efforts have exceeded equity goals, demonstrating our commitment to fostering a diverse and inclusive marketplace. Alongside this market growth, we have enhanced our efforts in combating the illicit market with increased enforcement powers. We're steadily working towards a safer and regulated environment for all. These achievements, paired with a commitment to ongoing examination and a willingness to adjust or adapt, reflect the dedication and collaboration of all stakeholders involved, and I look forward to our discussions on further advancing these goals. Our first order of business is the review and approval of meeting minutes from the April 11th, 2024 Cannabis Control Board meeting. May I please have a motion to consider and approve the April 11th, 2024 board meeting minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion by any board member? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, the motion to approve the April 11th, 2024 board meeting minutes carries. For our first resolution today, may I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-69, consideration of adult use cannabis licenses.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And now I'd like to please ask our executive director to provide a brief overview of this resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members, and good morning, all those in attendance. Before the board today is our fourth cohort of adult use cannabis licenses, which have been cleared by the licensing, enforcement, and other teams involved in the review process. These applications are from the application window that opened on October 4th and closed on December 18th. The 104 applicants include 23 retail dispensaries, 14 micro businesses, 27 cultivators, 23 distributors, and 17 processors. I want to also highlight that the office, since last month's board meeting and the ability to issue provisional licenses, was delegated to the office. We have 17 provisional licenses also advancing at this time. If approved, this will make 540 adult use cannabis licenses approved in 2024. As many of you are aware, this is a complicated and lengthy process, and we just want to thank our licensing team and others for driving this effort. From the last column displayed here, you can see the total number of licenses that have been issued this year: 90 cultivators, 53 distributors, 93 micros, 51 processors, 159 retail, and 95 card who have transitioned from provisional to final licensure. With 540 licenses issued this year, we do see the supply chain getting strengthened, and we're excited on the ability that we've been able to create and deliver opportunity to many New York business owners.
That's it. Thank you, Chris, for that overview of the resolution and the status of our licensing operations. Are there any questions or comments from the board related to this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Knight,
Aye.
Ms. Garcia,
Aye.
and I vote in the affirmative as well. The motion to approve resolution number 2024-69, consideration of adult use cannabis licenses, passes. For our next order of business, may I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-70, consideration of adult use cannabis licenses for denial.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
And now may I please ask our executive director if you'll please provide a brief overview of this resolution as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Per the cannabis law, the board is charged with the authority to issue or refuse to issue any registration, license, or permit. The applications before the board for denial are initial card applications from the card application window, which closed in September of 2022. But they were delayed in issuance of denials because of the litigation that paused the processing of card applications. These applicants were notified that they didn't meet the eligibility requirements, but this official denial closes that application officially. The applications recommended for denial did not meet requirements, usually on two deficiencies. Either they did not demonstrate justice involvement, or they did not prove to operate a qualifying business as defined in Section 116.4 of the regulations that created the card program. The office is working through these initial card applications and plans to have more for the board to consider at next board meetings, as well as card licenses that are being reviewed for approval as well, now that we can review since the that time period where we were frozen has ended.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments by any board members?
I have a question.
Mr. Perry?
I have a question.
Yes.
So this is the first time that I recall us being presented with a list of licenses to be denied. Why is that?
Thank you, Board Member Perry, for the question. This is just the process of closing out the card application window. We did have an injunction that was caused by litigation, and then a settlement that created a further pause in processing, which would include denying of these applications. So due to litigation, we were frozen for several months in taking action on these applications.
Thank you.
And I have another
And
question.
so does this mean that for every license the office chooses not to recommend, we have to take an action to deny those licenses or to ratify the office's decision not to recommend it to the board? I don't understand that.
That is currently the process. We can, obviously, delegations can be made in other ways. There are applicants or applications that were voided for being incomplete, or somebody not being able to or being responsive during the cure period. And those, the office can handle. But if an application is being closed and we're not going to be engaging and that applicant is still pushing forward, yes, currently there's a process for the board to deny. We can adjust that in the future if that is the desire of the board.
Yeah, I'm just not understanding why this is the first time that we're doing that. when the office has been processing licenses and recommending licenses to us to approve. And I understood from the statute that the process was if the office recommends a license, that the board has the power to grant or deny, but not that we were going to look at every single action that the office took that reviews an application that may have some deficiency. So now we have to review every single time the board says that somebody didn't provide or doesn't provide the necessary components or fail to meet some certain criteria. We have to be presented with and make a board action on every single one of those things. Is that like the new processes of now?
Well, Board Member Perry, this is, as you know, obviously with our first, we had 3 initial application windows: the cultivation, conditional cultivation and processing programs, which was really just, based on previous participation in a state program, and then the card program was the first, program where we created based off of a different eligibility criteria. So this is the first time that we're doing this, but if the desire of the board is to take a different approach, that's fully something that we can absolutely discuss.
Well, also, so you're giving us this big list of denials, which I assume in the aggregate is going to exceed the list of grants. Do we not have some need then to go into each one of these things and consider the basis for the denial as well?
Yeah, and so we provided to the board just a spreadsheet that demonstrated the reason for the denial. As you recall from the card program's inception, the requirement based on the statute was the requirement that somebody had a marijuana-related conviction. There were folks who did not have a state conviction or had a federal conviction or something that didn't meet the eligibility requirements. They didn't operate the business. And so, those are the 2 reasons that folks were denied. I can identify if there's any other instance. I don't believe there was any other instance in which an application was denied. It was purely eligibility.
May I jump in here? It's part of the process that I think is not, that has not been mentioned yet, is that that our resolutions are actually the approval of the preliminary determination that's made by the chairperson of the board, who receives the information from the office and goes through all of the responses that the office provide us, so that if there are any questions and or concerns related to these denials, as well as when we're doing approvals, that we can source through and find out what the baseline really is in each instance. So the process hasn't changed. That's been the process that we've been using since we've been issuing any licenses. And so it is not changing anything. It really is still just passing along the information to the board, having a preliminary determination, which is actually what we're approving in all of our resolutions.
Doesn't the statute require a period of time after the office provides the initial determination to the chair, that the board has a period of time to object and ask for further action on the initial determination presented by the office to the chair?
Yes, I think it's 14 days.
I don't recall, and Madam Chair, if you've made an initial determination on these things, I don't recall having 14 days to review that initial determination.
I think that you're highlighting what's been one of our sore points since we've begun operations here. The office has not delivered information to us in advance so that we could have a 14-day period. And ever since we've been in operations, this board has sort of waived that 14-day period, and just relied on the preliminary determination. However, it is well within the powers of this board to make a determination that they need further information or that they have questions, and they can vote against this resolution or any resolution that is based upon a chairperson's preliminary determination and request additional information. And that is what has been in all of the resolutions that we have passed since our inception. So we definitely have that power. It has really just been an issue of timing and scheduling. And so, I guess it's been, I'm gonna say in the haste to push forward the work. When we get things a week, in 1 week in advance for review and determination, no one has opted to say, let's have an additional 14 days. However, the power remains in the hands of the board, and we are well within our rights if that's what we choose to do.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor this, but I want to make clear that I was fine with grants reviewed and recommended by the board having an expedited process, but I take very serious issue with the suggestion that that extends to board members, including those who represent the legislative interest, acquiescing to now having this denial process with no advance notice. Granting a license, fine. I'm fine with shortening or waiving the 14-day review process, but this is a denial process. And I don't find that the office has, I think you alluded to the office, part of the hard part or whatever it is, that the office has delayed providing us things. I haven't had any problem with that. What I do have is a problem now that the chair is provided with items on denial that apparently you've made a preliminary determination on that I haven't had any significant time to consider. And now I'm being asked, this is about denials, not about everything else. And this is the first time this has happened.
So
So
I appreciate that, and I am going to say that in this moment, we have all had the same amount of time to review information. I get it along with everybody else on the board. And we have been working under extremely tight time constraints. I will say that a number of the issues that were raised during our discussion regarding these denials was the understanding or the lack of understanding of many of these applicants regarding what qualified them under the conviction or not, or charges under the marijuana laws as they existed before March 2021. There was a lot of discussion, and that, as you will see from the information provided to us and attached to this resolution, was the cause why most people were unable to meet the eligibility requirements. Additionally, the other part was, as identified by our executive director, people who were unable to provide tax returns to prove that their businesses were profitable. Very often, the concern was that people, I should say that the problem appeared as people submitting individual tax returns that did not provide sufficient information on where the income was coming from or that it was a viable business. Additionally, we had some concerns related to profitability because that was also one of the mandates of the card program. So each of these licensees or applicants who submitted applications, we have created a chart that is attached to this resolution to identify what the cause or the rationale for their denial is. It was discussed with our office this past week. I believe we received this information on Friday, and I've talked with our office at least 3 times this week about this packet of information, and we've gone through to make sure that it is clear what it is was the standard and what it is that we're saying, what the denial is, particularly in an instance where people have been waiting over a year for a response from us. We just wanted to make sure that this information was clear. So that's the information, and we all have had it for this week, and I'm very sorry that it is, I agree with you. It would be much better if we all had the full 2 weeks to review information, but considering this moment, the date of our meeting, I know that the office was very concerned at getting this forward before the public, and so we've done our best to make sure that we could accommodate that request.
Just one last thing. So we're lumping together here denials based on things that are not curable, like someone doesn't have a conviction, for example, with things that may be curable. In other words, they didn't provide adequate tax records to justify the approval, right? So those are all lumped together in this?
The 2 causes are lumped together here. However, the people that are lacking tax returns have been unable to cure for over the past 12 months. And therefore, I think the office has come to the conclusion, and maybe I'll allow Chris to speak here, that these people are actually incapable of curing. But I'll pass that off to the
That's
executive
correct,
director.
Madam Chair.
Well,
No,
before
yeah.
you, Executive Director, may I just, because I want you to add this into your answer. So in other words, we're getting all these complaints about how long it's taken to license, when your office has been, as the chair stated, your office has been working with people to ask them for records multiple times that they haven't been provided. So some licenses that are taking extended times are not because the office isn't processing them, but the office is asking some of these people who are apparently in this queue for denial has been asking for records and they haven't been provided despite multiple efforts. Also, I'm curious about the timing. I understand from publicly available information and from people who apply for liquor licenses that liquor licenses typically take at least 6 months, and some of them, where there are issues, take up to a year. So the information is confusing me as to the timing that it takes to get a license, when it appears that some of the license grants or delays or denials are due to individuals not providing information if they've been requested, among other reasons. But I assume that some licenses we grant are at least in line with or shorter than the typical 6 months or longer periods it takes to get licenses from other New York State entities. If you can comment on that as well.
Yeah, Board Member Perry, I think I want to echo the chair's sentiment. Yes, that is correct. That we do have folks who we've taken a significant amount of time and effort to try to get demonstrate either that they have the conviction or that they did in fact operate the business. In some cases, it was that they just didn't have the tax documents prepared, but that was a part of the requirements of the program, and so the inability to provide that was something that we did spend a good amount of time trying to ask folks to get if they did attest to actually operating a business. That then we wanted to push to see what they could do to get the required documentation. But yeah, we have now, CARD moved a bit faster in terms of the issuance in the beginning. And now, and obviously was paused due to the injunction, but now with our current adult use from the applications from November and December, we've gotten 500 out the door this year, and so it's a shorter wait time than that. That you expressed there. I think the one thing I just wanted to add here in terms of the cure process and what it means. We have a statutory requirement to give folks time. But in working with individuals and applicants, the office wants to give these licenses out, and so going through those deficiencies is something that we take very seriously, and providing ample opportunity for folks to provide the required documentation. I just don't want to glance over that because these folks who are presented here for denial, the office has gone to great lengths to ensure that we were ready to make that decision. I will just also add that the reason for the timing of this coming now is, the settlement that we had entered into paused us on reviewing or doing anything with the card pool of applicants, of remaining applicants up until April 1st. And so we're just now in the point where we started to reopen those files, check and see the status of those applications. And as these denial comes, we do hope to get some approvals as well in the coming meetings.
Madam Chair, just one last question, I promised, and then I promised to leave this.
No, it's fine.
So it sounds like there's been a suggestion that the office has had some difficulty processing things, maybe that sometimes I know that has to do with personnel. And I'm wondering if we can understand why hasn't the office made any requests to OGS or the governor's office or whoever for additional staff? Why haven't we made any requests for that?
Well,
Or am I wrong?
I am going to say that there have been requests for additional staff. There are currently, I think, 12 FTEs, full-time employee openings that have just been posted recently, and they are growing their team with some people on loan from other agencies that are coming on board to assist with this work of processing applications. So requests have been made, they are being answered, and the office is working with the with the team at OGS as well as the governor's office to get additional resources so that they can process
So you're saying that
applications.
it's not that the office didn't make requests, the office did make requests, they just weren't fulfilled or approved.
I
or responded.
can't say all of that, but what I am saying is that currently we have open jobs that had not been posted. They have now currently been posted. We have requests that are trying to be fulfilled, and I believe that the number of employees have also been increased, of authorized employees have been increased for our office. So I'm saying that it is a work in progress and that we are trying to make sure that the needs are met and that we're able to process applications in an expedited and efficient manner.
Sure, and I'm not trying to make a headline for a news article, just metaphorically speaking. But if the idea is that the office was sitting there not asking for additional staff at any time, and all of a sudden somebody's saying that we need to ask for additional staff, it sounds like that's not accurate. It sounds like the office has asked for staff for a period
I'm
of time.
going to say, Adam, I don't know, and at this moment, I don't think we have the information in front of us to say who asked whom. I think that we may be able to go back and have the office contact you directly to give you an update on what requests they may have made. But I don't think at this moment that this is the space or that they're prepared to give a report on what their communications have been with the governor's office or with OGS at this time. So I am going to say that we are currently in a space where we know that
So
we have.
I'm sure that any commentary we see on that is accurate about the historical facts, and it's accurate about the historical facts. And, if there's anybody who's going to be making any commentary or reporting on this, that like every other public authority who's having external review, the agency is provided with a draft. I've served on public authorities for now more than 2 decades, and I counsel many of them. And every single time an outside reviewer does a report, the New York State Comptroller, what have you, including some federal agencies, they provide a draft report so that the office can say, hey, there's some facts that should be added to this, or there's an error. And I think everybody knows that who's served on a public authority. And so I would like to see that to address those things. The other thing is that as a business litigator for 30 years, and as a public authority board member for 20 years, as a lawyer for those authorities, and understanding the type and type of litigation over entities in New York, I have never seen the volume and breadth and type of lawsuits that the office has faced in this short period. And I would like to have any report on anything about what's going on, to have a substantive discussion by someone qualified to do so about how that litigation has impacted the process. And I don't think that any discussion that we have, including the resolutions before us, I'm trying to confine my comments to this as much as possible. I would like to have a honest, fair, balanced, and accurate, but most of all, helpful commentary that includes all of the key salient facts. And this tidal wave of litigation is certainly one of them, and it can't be ignored in my opinion.
I appreciate that, and I think that if we are in an opportunity where we're going to have one of those reports, that these are key components. At this time, I'm going to say the board has not been presented with any report. And with regards to the, I'm going to say the audit and oversight that has recently been conducted of our office, we have requested, or at least I have requested, that our board receive an update on their findings. And as soon as that is available, we will be assembled so that we can get that update. And I think that these are great points that we can bring up at that meeting.
And just a semantic point that I feel I need to make, because I think it's important for people to understand. The Office of Cannabis Management is akin to an executive department of New York State. Some people who talk to me say, seem to think that the board is responsible for all these things.
Yeah.
We're a separate control board that receives recommendations and has other statutory powers, but we're not responsible for running the office. And so I just want people to be clear on that. And I agree, Madam Chair, you said audit. Well, every single audit I've ever seen has been provided to the target department, including New York State departments, New York State public authorities, in advance, so that there can be a dialogue between the reviewers and the reviewed, or the auditors and the people they're auditing, so that facts can be pointed out. Here, I assure you, at the MTA in New York and here at the NFTA in Western New York, I have never in 17 years seen a report by the New York State Controller, that's Tom DiNapoli and before, where my staff did not point out to the auditors, hey, there's a mistake here, or this information may be misleading, or perhaps you are unaware of that. It's a very appropriate, professional, and universal process. And in almost every case, the auditors take some or all, because we're very prudent about what we want to point out, the auditor takes some or all of our factual corrections and recommendations and update the audit. So I just don't understand why anything that's going to touch on any of these things wouldn't be provided separately to Madam Chair and the board, for the board to make its determination, and then separately to the office for the office to make its determination, recommendations, and suggestions. And that's all.
Thank you. And it is well.
Madam Chair,
It was received. And Jessica, please, you have
Yeah,
the floor.
sorry, just to bring us back to the resolution, I actually do have a question. I'm not sure if it's, I think it might be for Chris. Appreciate you going through the curing, or a bit of the curing process, and acknowledging how much time the staff spends on that. But I've been a little unclear about the notification to folks, particularly this group of denials. Have they already received notification? Are they waiting for this board meeting to happen, and therefore the first time they might have seen their name is on the notice for this meeting? Like, can you walk me through how folks hear about what we're moving for them, and at what point they hear from you versus the board about what actions we're taking with their license application?
No problem, Board Member Garcia. So during the review of the card applications, and as the review was concluding, we had communicated repeatedly to licensees that they had failed to meet eligibility for the program. And so the communication that they had most recently received, though it might have been last year, was that they failed to meet eligibility for the program. This is their first time seeing their name on a board meeting agenda, but they have received notifications multiple times that they failed to meet eligibility for the program. So this is not the first time they're hearing this.
Any additional questions, comments from the board members? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
I abstain on this item.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Garcia?
Aye.
And I vote in the affirmative. The motion to approve resolution number 2024-70, consideration of adult use cannabis license denials, carries. Next, may I have a motion to table resolution number 2024-71, consideration to deny certain adult use license.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments from the board?
I think this motion is a very good example of the type of action that we can take when we see a denial that we want more information about. And so while that first group were ones that we weren't highlighted, didn't pop up that we wanted more information about, we were able to say, no, we want more information about this.
Yeah. And the reason that we're asking for it to be tabled is that we would like for the office to further consider the process involved in the management of this particular case. We would like to have more conversation. So is there any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
I'm abstaining on this item.
thank you. Ms. Knight,
Aye.
Ms. Garcia,
Sorry, aye.
and I vote in the affirmative. The motion to table resolution number 2024-71, consideration to deny certain adult use license carries. For our next order of business, may I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-72, consideration of emergency enforcement regulations.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. I'll now ask our executive director to please provide a brief overview of this proposed resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Wright. We have another update to our violations, hearings, and enforcement regulations. We just kind of standing agenda item, but important that we continue to update the regulations that define and guide how we carry out our enforcement actions. These emergency regulations will withdraw the current emergency regs that are in place and replace them with this updated version, which includes provisions related to the additional enforcement powers the office obtained as a result of the budget legislation. We were able to present the changes from the budget, I believe, last board meeting, but the regs here, just a couple of key things that I just want to highlight here. The one that I believe is most important is really just the broadened authority that we now have to issue padlocks and seal orders for these illicit shops, as well as the hearing process that follows. And so this the updated package really spells out a process by which we can maintain public health and safety in an expedited way, but also that folks who are having illicit shops padlocked have a way to go through our administrative hearing process and make their case.
Thank you. Are there any questions, discussion, or comments from any board members? Okay. So I just want to be clear with everybody here, Chris, if you can just clarify, this means that we are removing the April 11th draft, and what we will be approving is this current draft that includes the changes that I believe were passed on April 10th or 15th.
No, this is a new updated copy, updated regular. These will go into an effect as on an emergency basis, and so if adopted now, they'll be
Incorporates the
it incorporates
law that
changes.
was-
Yes,
That's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just clarify the record.
Okay.
I have a question.
That, would you like to go ahead or have me explain the process first?
Explain, then question.
Got it.
Thank you.
So the SAP process requires a filing of a complete notice of proposed rulemaking. Along with that notice of proposed rulemaking, we will be filing emergency regulations so that those regulations can go into effect immediately. Those two processes work in tandem, and during the notice of proposed process, the public will get an opportunity to comment. And then at the end of that process, final regulations will be presented to the board for adoption. And the reason why we are replacing the package is to afford the public an opportunity to review all of the changes, including those that were adopted by the board last month. So we're replacing last month's notice of proposed with a new notice of proposed to restart the process.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Any additional comments? Mr. Perry?
Sure. So just a couple of things. I understand that state tax and the state liquor authority have hundreds of licensed sworn armed personnel to do enforcement activities. I mean, that's just my general knowledge. And I think, how many do we have at OCM to address illegal operations comparatively to SLA and state tax?
State tax is hundreds, SLA has less. We are still building our enforcement team. We're still under 30.
How many?
We're under 30. We're hiring, but we're still under 30.
Okay, we're under 30, but as of last year and the year before, we've had a lot less, have we not?
Yeah, 12 to 15.
Seems to me that there was a time when we had, 5 or 10.
That's correct.
Okay. And so I'm just struggling. I saw someone commenting that our enforcement efforts, or lack thereof, may have had some impact on the number of illegal stores. I just don't know how we do that with 10 people for a statewide problem, including in New York City. So that was confusing to me. But also, just as a matter of projecting the number of licenses relative to the number of illegal stores that are operating or had been operating, is it true that if we had issued 2 or 3 times the licenses or exceeded some of the comparison states that don't have equity like New York does, that would have eliminated the illegal shop problem? So it seems like somebody's saying that it's a fact that if we would have issued, instead of 200 licenses, 400 licenses, the illegal shop problem would have disappeared. Is that a fact?
No.
Okay, I don't know why anybody's saying that, but it's baffling to me that there would be a suggestion that flooding the market with licenses would all of a sudden cause. It sounds like the illegal store issue is an issue of state legislation and outside executive action, not that instead of issuing 122 or 242 retail licenses, if we would have issued double that, it would have had an impact. I don't know how anybody can make that statement as a matter of logical fact. And I'm confused by that, so I'm really looking for you to help me, because I just don't understand.
I don't know that anyone is making that statement, Adam. I think that in tandem with closing down shops, we need to open up more legal shops so that we are replacing the illicit product that people are currently buying in bulk with legal, tested, safe product. And so I think it's incredibly important that we take into account the number of illicit shops when we're looking at the number of legal dispensaries that we are trying to open, because the more of these illegal shops that we can close, the more that we support the legal market. I think that's the argument that is being made.
I got it. I'm just always concerned when I see people who don't have a history in cannabis as you do, and I've seen some things suggesting that if we would have issued more licenses faster, that would have had it, here we go, cause and effect, no controls, no scientific study, no evidence, that would have substantially reduced the number of illegal shops. I would like to see some proof that a scientific or academic reviewer would look at and say, yes, that's true. I don't see any proof of it. And I want to compound that and combine that with the fact that from the beginning, we only had a very small enforcement staff, and we still have a small enforcement staff compared to New York State agencies charged with going in and closing down places. State tax does a lot of enforcement and stops businesses from selling things without collecting sales tax and so forth. And the state liquor authority has a number of personnel and so forth, and we have very little. So what I see is those two criticisms, and then the if this, then that, and I don't see any evidence. I do agree that there needs to be an effort, if all things being equal, if we existed in a vacuum and we didn't have a tidal wave of lawsuits, requests for personnel that weren't being acted on quickly, and a whole bunch of other things, and a statute that requires equity, like many of the others don't. If we didn't have any of those issues, I still don't know if that would have had an impact on the illegal stores. And right now, today, it seems that the legislature needed to have, we're not the legislature. Cannabis Control Board is not the legislature. The Office of Cannabis Management is not the legislature. it seems that the legislature needed to act much sooner and that we needed to pass regulations after that to support that, which is what we're doing now. But I don't see how that's the fault of the office or the board for that matter in this alleged proliferation of, or the actual number of illicit shops. I just don't see any evidence that the two things are connected, and I'd like somebody to prove that to me in a way that can withstand peer review in a scientific manner. That's
Thank you. Are there any other questions and comments from the board?
I'm just very happy to move these along and start seeing more enforcement throughout the state. I know we've done a lot of focusing on the city because there are lots of illicit shops in the city, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing this enforcement across the state.
May I ask, are our 30 agents going to do all the enforcement? So now we're required with our 30 agents to do enforcement across the state. And, you know, there's like, I don't know, 30,000 police officers in the NYPD. Are our 30 officers going to enforce all this?
They've been, our team is small but mighty. They've been running around the state, all 15 of them, doing all that they can to seize illicit products. They'll continue that work. I think the goal is to build some more partnerships so we can get some support in that. And you know, I think part of the provisions that our team was able to ensure was included in the legislation was a way to pull in local officials to support. So we'll still be leading.
Let me
but definitely
just
have
ask,
some-
aren't we creating a task force as one of the terms of the new legislation?
It's not a term of the legislation.
Is it not part of the, okay, because I was gonna say, I thought we were pulling together, I'm referring to it as a task force, but it's a partnership with tax, the sheriff's department, local police departments, and OCM. I was under the,
So that was, thank you, Chair. That was some of the partnership that Chris Alexander referred to. The legislation itself provided the authorization to the Office of Cannabis Management to seal unlicensed businesses upon inspection if those businesses met a certain criteria, such as selling cannabis products that were not from New York State or tested in New York State, sales to minors, proximity to churches or schools, and other types
so
of criteria.
is there no alignment and no agreement that we're going to be working in partnership with these other agencies?
If I could just continue.
Oh, okay, I'm
The legislation did quite a bit.
Okay.
And the first step was to create this authority for the Office of Cannabis Management. The second step was to authorize local governments to adopt their own laws implementing very similar legislation for themselves so that they could, specifically with regard to unlicensed entities, also conduct parallel local enforcement efforts to close those unlicensed businesses. And so together across the state, we hope that by multiplying the forces. In addition, the task force that you're referring to is an effort that the governor has spoken about and that is currently under development. So we've seen, for example, New York City begin initially because the legislation granted New York City immediately the authority to bring in the local enforcement efforts. So that's a great example of how other local governments can do the same. Counties and cities are authorized to do this. In addition, OCM plans to put in place force multipliers to expand its enforcement efforts to cover all areas of the state, New York City included. So it will make a significant impact once that effort gets rolling.
Thank you.
I have to ask, it sounds like this is another basis to create criticism down the road where there's an expectation that with this legislation and 30 or less personnel for a statewide effort. I mean, there are small towns in Erie County who have police forces larger than 30 for, a few square miles. But it sounds like we have this new legislation, we have these regulations, OCM do it, and if the number of shops don't decrease to someone's arbitrarily set reduction point, that it's going to be the grounds for more criticism. Where I would like to see are the provisions for us having, say, 100 more or 200 more sworn personnel who have police powers to implement these things. Where is that? And 200 is probably not enough. State tax has 400. Maybe we don't have the same issues and extent of activity as the DTF, but some reasonable subset of that seems to be what we would need if we're going to be charged with doing something and then criticized for not doing it because we weren't given the adequate allocation of personnel.
Chair, if I may, I don't want to respond directly to Board Member Perry's comment, but I did want to mention another aspect of the legislation that's very important and that we should state on the record, and mention that there will be additional information posted on the OCM website so that everybody can have an opportunity to learn and understand what the new legislation, the impact of the new legislation and how it will be implemented. In addition to those provisions that I explained previously, there are new provisions that increase penalties against landlords, because that is also a source of the problem. If landlords did not rent to unlicensed businesses, and it's very easy to check if a business is licensed or not. We have a list of unlicensed businesses on our website. If they did check and did not rent to businesses or brought holdover proceedings to evict unlicensed businesses, we would not be in this situation. And so the legislature recognized that they need to be held accountable as well. And there are provisions under the Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law with enhanced penalties going forward for landlords who do not take action when they're notified of the unlicensed activities.
So I just wanted, while you're there, can you just also amplify? I believe the provision says that the fines can run as much as 5 times the rent. Is that correct? Or some multiplier times the rent that they're charging any illicit shop?
Exactly. And that amount runs from the date that the notice is provided to the landlord. And we intend to notify every single landlord every time we inspect and determine that a business is selling unlicensed cannabis without a license. That's the penalty outside New York City. Inside New York City, it's a flat $50,000.
I think there's an opportunity here for collaboration with local law enforcement, and I would like to see the office moving forward try and do some education with towns and municipalities of how they can be our partner. Because I know, speaking with local law enforcement in my region, they feel like their hands are tied and there's nothing they can do. And now with this new legislation, there is something they can do. And so I think there's education needed to let people know things have changed.
Yeah, we have taken significant efforts to do that education and to build that partnership. And of course, I've said it multiple times and I will continue to say it does still remain a felony to sell to an underage person. It remains a felony to sell over a certain limit. It remains a felony to sell or possess over a certain limit. And so, we have in this transition post-prohibition continued to remind law enforcement that despite legalization, we didn't legalize in a way that did not remain or keep in place certain controls that existed before. 95% of arrests pre-legalization were small, individualized possession or sale offenses, and so the larger scale operations and FILS felonies remain on the books, and they have not changed since legalization. So we do that education. We've done trainings just a couple of months ago here in Albany. We've done hosted municipal and county lawyers for their role in the process. We've done that, and we'll continue to do that.
I'd like to ask, so I just want to be clear. So creating new notices that need to be given to landlords and then following up on every single one of those notices, and then following escalating notices, and then taking third level enforcement actions. That all takes additional personnel time. And so I understand that the office just can't go out and hire whoever it wants. It has to get an approval. Is that correct? From OGS or from the governor's office or somebody? So are we being guaranteed, now that we're saying, well, we have all these tools, are we being guaranteed that we will have workers to use the tools, or are we just creating a bunch of tools with nobody to actually work on them? And as far as local law enforcement, I've already asked our chief of enforcement and our Western New York person, conjunction with the Erie County Law Enforcement Association and the Western New York Law Association, if we could present to those entities. I've connected the mayor of Niagara Falls, Mayor Robert Rustino, and Mayor of Buffalo, Byron Brown, with our enforcement people. But it seems to me that we still have a situation where we've got a whole bunch of theories and a whole bunch of tools in a toolbox, but we don't, still don't see how we have a flood of additional personnel to use these tools. I don't believe, based on what I know about the office, that our 30 enforcement personnel are sitting there doing nothing. They're busy. So now we're saying you have all this other stuff to do, and how are they supposed to do what they have now and then use all these additional tools without a significant additional staff?
I could answer that.
Go ahead.
So we have reached out to other agencies to supplement our staff because we recognize that this is an extremely important endeavor, and we cannot wait until we are provided with additional staffing resources. So we are taking a number of measures to complement our existing staff so that we're able to conduct all of these activities
And
as required.
may I also ask, and the nuisance provisions are really designed to be managed by local enforcement agents, aren't they? Not by OCM. So the actions against landlords, the against landlords, isn't that really going to be managed by the local, not by?
Actually, thank you for asking that question, because the Real Actions and Proceedings Law, it is a law that can be used in the law. It's written in that local governments can bring those actions. And actually, that is something that we do plan to reach out to local governments on, because they can piggyback off our notices. They can provide their own notices and
they
set
can
the clock
institute
ticking
nuisance, right?
in order to bring those actions themselves. And they will be able to bring those actions and collect those penalties for the local government. And so I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to also plug that as well. That's another way that local governments can participate in solving this problem.
Thank you. So are there any other?
Yeah, my last comment, not to belabor this, is that I'm very concerned that this is a big problem, clearly, that I have worked very closely with enforcement staff, with local permits and inspections people here in Western New York, with local police departments very closely here in Western New York, to help to address this problem as aggressively as possible, and have also assisted cities in questions they had about drafting very aggressive permits and inspections provisions and so on. But what I don't want to repeat is a situation where we pass a bill, we pass some regulations, we're given no additional resources, and a few months down the road, it's, well, the OCM isn't doing anything, when the fact is that it's a matter of actually having personnel assigned and resources assigned to get the job done. It's not like people are sitting there not answering the phones. You have 30 people to do 7,000 transactions, and OCM just can't hire whoever it wants. I assume the executive director would just hire hundreds of employees if he didn't have any other constraints, but who knows? That's all I have.
Thank you. This is an ongoing conversation, and we will continue to bring updates to you all so that we can stay abreast of what the progress is in our organization, as well as through our collaborations with other state agencies and local municipalities. But hearing no other questions, I will call for the vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Knight,
Aye.
Ms. Garcia,
Aye.
and I vote in the affirmative as well. The motion to approve resolution number 2024-72, consideration of emergency enforcement regulations, carries. Our next order of business, let's see, may I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-73, consideration of card provisional license extension.
So moved.
So,
May I count yours as a second, Mr. Perry?
yes, ma'am.
All right. I will now ask our executive director, please provide a brief overview of this provision, this resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this resolution is in line with the previous item related to the card program. The card program requires that all card licensees, and this is true for other provisional licensees, commence operations within no later than 12 months from the date the license is issued, unless otherwise determined by the board. Due to litigation, obviously, we had a pretty significant holdup of the card program, and folks were unable to move or make commitments. We have put in front of the board this extension of that provisional license period to just give an opportunity for those folks to make up the lost time. We do know that the field has changed, as there are a lot more licensees out also looking for viable locations. And so this resolution would also remove the geographical restrictions on the card provisional licensees, many of whom are now confined to a space, whereas other folks who are being provisionally licensed are not. The initial intent was to provide some geographic distribution. We're no longer in that place where that was the only licensing program operational, and so there's no longer need for that restriction. This will allow card folks to move around in other locations that are viable, other locations that might need dispensaries, and to have some more time to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments, concerns from the board? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Knight,
Aye.
Ms. Garcia,
Aye.
and I vote in the affirmative as well. The motion to approve resolution number 2024-23, consideration of card provisional license extension, carries. May I please have a motion for our next order of business? May I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-74, consideration of registered organization dispensing facility requests.
So moved.
May I have a
So
second?
moved.
And we have a second. If you don't mind, Ms. Garcia, I'm going to count yours as the second. And please, Mr. Alexander, if you can please provide a brief overview of this resolution as well.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Our existing registered organizations all currently have or are able to have additional 5 and 6 dispensaries, or are able to expand their current dispensary count to a 5th and 6th dispensary locations, provided that those locations are in unserved or underserved areas of the state, i.e. no access to medical cannabis. And so we have 2 of our ROs identifying locations where they would like to open up additional medical dispensaries. I think proposed Rise dispensary would be in Syracuse, and then, sorry. Can't see the additional location, but 5th and 6th locations for ROs who are interested in expanding access to medical cannabis. I just want to highlight too, and I'll talk about this later, and we talked about this at the CAB meeting, the work that's being done by the office to expand access to medical cannabis in the state, investments that have not been made since the inception of the program. So really proud to be able to make those investments and also allow for an expansion of the medical program.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any comments or questions or concerns from the board members?
So I just want to clarify that the 2 Curaleaf and the Good Flower are medical only, but the Rise is
co-located. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. there are no other questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Ms. Knight,
Aye.
Ms. Garcia,
Aye.
and I vote in the affirmative as well. Resolution number 2024-74, consideration of registered organization dispensing facility request carries. Now, our next order of business. May I please have a motion to consider resolution number 2024-75, supplemental policy guidance for the review of adult use applications from the October 2023 application window.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
And I'll ask our executive director, please provide a brief overview of this proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution refers to an update or a shift to the review and consideration of applicants from the most recent application window. This guidance will expand upon the adult use application FAQs originally released with the opening of the application window. And in broad strokes, the guidance details the following. The office will review all applications in the November queue. The office will prioritize the review of the November queue before issuing and reviewing licenses for retail and micro business for the December queue. That does not count the cultivation licenses. The guidance clarifies reasons why a retail applicant will be eligible to receive a provisional license, so i.e. if a location doesn't work or is in conflict with another location, an applicant will be giving a provisional license to go out and find a location. The board will provide an update on the license targets for applications in the December queue based on updated information from supply and demand analysis in the supply chain.
Thank you, Chris. Is there any question, comments, or discussion from board members?
Thank you for this. I think this is really necessary.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm really pleased with this. I'm really happy to see that we're making things really clear for our applicants so that they can know and understand what our processes are, so they can get a better understanding of what the timeframes might be in planning their businesses. The reassurance that we are reviewing all of the applications, that it is clear that while we do target a flourishing, full, robust marketplace, we do not actually have numbers or limits on the number of licenses. And so it is an opportunity moment for everyone to participate. And I think that that's a very important point for us as we're moving forward, so that we know that your efforts are being paid attention to and that we are aligned with you to make sure that this is going to be efficient. So thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Perry.
So you were saying that there's not any limit in New York on the number of licenses, so we could have thousands and thousands and thousands of licenses, and we're not going to limit the number in any way. So there could be a flood of retail stores in any given area. Anybody who wants a license will get one. We're not going to limit the licenses in any way.
That's not what I said, but I understand how someone could make that leap. And so I want to be very clear that what this policy says is that our board retains the power to assess what is going on in the marketplace and to issue licenses as we deem appropriate. As whatever the sitting board is looking at that moment in time, whatever the marketplace demands, if we are stronger or we need more, or if we've determined that there are some weaknesses in our system that we need to address, we have the power and the authority to address it in real time, and that we are not beholden to any fixed number at this moment, because we are also very early in the development of our marketplace. So that's what this reflects. It reflects an openness and to say that we are going to be flexible and that we will continue to move according to what the demands are. If it means increasing the number of growers or processors or distribution licenses, if it means that we're looking at the number of dispensaries, if we've realized that we have oversaturation in consumption spaces, or that we might really need to be able to provide some in regions where there's not enough access, that we have that power and the authority. So that's what this says, and it says that there are no fixed number targets, but that we have goals, and that those goals mean a robust, efficient marketplace. So I think that that's the direction that we're trying to move in, and that we don't want to be beholden to anything else other than a good, strong market.
Okay, so those goals that you're talking about are not numeric goals. Those are general, somewhat subjective goals on determinations that we'll make as we look at the market over time. We're not setting numbers or specific numeric proportions, is that right?
Yes, at this time, we are not setting numeric goals. We are definitely just looking at the aspirational goal of a healthy marketplace.
Understood. I understand that some states, and I believe this is the case in Missouri, set a statutory limit of 200 licenses statewide, and then allowed each licensee to open a number of stores. And therefore, they have a very clear, predictable economic value. People who are investing in buying licenses have an idea of what the market conditions are and how to evaluate a license and how to evaluate whether to enter the market. And so there is some level of control. It sounds like in the situation that we have, I don't know is there any mechanism to prevent just an unlimited number of stores opening up and clustering in an area across the street from each other to have dozens of stores in a
Yes,
small
that
community?
power, it sits with this board. And it is definitively up to this board to make sure that if we deem that a problem, that we do not license them
Wow.
in that manner or to place them there. Because that's what the power of our license, that's what our licensing authority grants us. So that if this board deems that there is too much concentration in a particular area and that we do not want to issue additional licenses, we still retain that power. So we are not limited to just give out licenses without regard for what market conditions are or what community demands might be. We have the ability to listen to communities as well as to determine what the marketplace should look like.
And I'd like to add to that also, there are proximity rules, and with all of the illicit shops, there are no proximity rules, and they're all on top of each other. And so the goal is to close those shops and replace them with legal shops that are better spread out, can better maintain the market. I think that it's all a step-by-step process, and that we have to continually be evaluating as we go. And so there's no reason to set a fixed number now, because that is going to continue to change. And why should we have to keep saying, well, now the number is this? Oh, wait, no, now the number is this. Instead of saying, based on the conditions that we're in right now, this is what we're doing.
And also, I know that you mentioned what the market value is of a license. We're looking at I'm going to say a unique marketplace here in New York State, where we are dominated by really small businesses that have not really been valuated because they don't have a history of business yet. And so we don't know what their real valuation is. We see stores in, say, California that are currently for sale, and I'm just talking about dispensaries, that gross over 10 million, that have profits of 2 million, that are for sale for 5 million currently. But down the road and in the next town over, someone that has 3 million in sales is actually for sale for $7 million versus the $2 million profit. So valuations are going to change. It's going to be about locations and experience and a whole bunch of other things. And so I don't think that we have to be worried about setting the market value of a license at this time. I think that we really have to be focused on what does opportunity and the development of our market look like at this moment. And I think that the flexibility that we are giving ourselves by not tying ourselves or tethering ourselves to specific numbers gives us a lot of leeway and ability to respond in real time to things that pop up.
Yeah, I just want to say that Professor Gilbert Jenkins, it sounds like the office, through its practice of reviewing and making determinations on licenses and applying these proximity rules and other rules, is doing exactly what you're saying. So I'm glad the office is doing that. I don't believe, goals are great, statutes are great, laws are great, they provide tools to police officers, and I talk to them all the time, but I don't see how this job gets done with 30 law enforcement officers that we have, and then maybe making some coalitions or some partnerships or some, nebulous kind of arrangements that we have. I'm very concerned that we say we passed a law, we passed regulations, but we don't have the tools to turn that aspiration into a reality. And I also am concerned that there are some people out there who might not be concerned about protecting the market so that it makes sense, so that we don't have clusters of spores. Maybe they would just like people to go out and Google it and take their chances on the mean streets in a rough world. But I think that the office has an obligation, and I think with this board, has applied reasonable limitations. Although they may not seem logical to people who don't have cannabis experience, that's what I think we have been doing under very difficult circumstances. But that's all I have. I don't have anything else before we vote on this particular resolution.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the board? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Dr. Gilbert Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Garcia?
Aye.
And I vote in the affirmative as well. The motion to approve resolution number 2024-75, consideration of supplemental policy guidance for the review of adult use applications from the October 2023 application window carries. And that concludes the resolutions before the board today. And now I'll invite our executive director to please provide an executive director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will start with enforcement, as it's been a discussion today. We did highlight a bit, and thank you, Linda, for going through the powers that were added through the enacted budget. Not much more to highlight here. I do want to come back and make mention of a proposal generated from the Office of a Task Force to pull some additional resources, knowing that resources remain a concern here. The only thing I want to jump in now, additionally from that, on the expanded enforcement powers, is just the continued role of the public in the process, both on reporting incidents, identifying illicit shops, et cetera. In order for members of the public to support this effort, we encourage reporting or flagging of illicit shops. On the front page of OCM's website and on the bottom of every page is the report an incident button, which allows us to keep track of these shops as there has been, as said, a proliferation. We also, always keep track of adverse health events and remain, that's, my number one concern with the shops is the potential, adverse events that could come from consumption of product that hasn't been tested or that in many cases failed testing in other states and has now been shipped over here. So we want to make sure that we're keeping track of that and we're able to deal with those issues and, of course, close down as many of the illicit shops as possible. Once that report comes in, we will, pull in that information and investigate and hopefully get that shop closed as quickly as possible. Shifting to some other issues that were covered in the budget, tax issues. The THC potency tax on cannabis has been repealed and replaced. I know folks were excited about that. There's now a 9% wholesale tax for adult use cannabis products, which brings the total rate down to about 13% with the 4% local. Pricing should remain the same, but this is definitely a cleaner way to approach the tax collection process. The medical excise tax has been reduced, not removed, but reduced from 7 to 3.15%. And so there will be continued evaluation of taxes related to the program and just the overall evaluation of the cost of product as we continue to move forward. Just quickly on licensing, we have continued to make progress on licensing. 139 final card licenses issued. That's a significant, those, not all those are open. I think we're about 122 open dispensaries in the state. Significant increase from the start of the year. And again, the progress that has been made in getting these dispensaries open cannot be understated. But we do have a lot more to go. We have 350 provisionally approved retail dispensaries. These are locations that are in process of getting set up, and as they continue to work through that process with our office, hopefully get to final licensure and open for business soon. 91 micro businesses are operational now, or not operational, are approved and hopefully soon operational. 90 of our cultivators have transitioned into permanent licenses, full licenses from the conditional licenses that they had, includes 51 processes as well. So we're making progress on licensing. Just, two notes. Obviously, our AUCCs and AUCPs are transitioning from conditional to non-conditional or final licenses. And then our provisional number includes both card and AU retail. Next slide. New York is continuing to build an equitable market with fair treatment, access to opportunity, and advancement of our equity goals. We're proud to be building a market that represents real New Yorkers, and thrilled to announce at this time 60% of all adult use licenses given in 2024 are owned by social and economic equity applicants. We remain very focused on this metric, and honestly, if there's a single thing, exceeding that goal, that 50% goal remains, such a central commitment for the office, and the training programs, the development, as well as just, getting these licenses out the door what allows us to stay there. In today's cohort of licenses, 38% are women-owned, 40% are minority-owned, 11% service-disabled vets, 6% represent distressed farmers, and 6% from individuals from communities that have been disproportionately impacted. As we heard earlier today, the passage of the resolution related to the shift in the licensing process. The office will continue to review the November queue. We have gotten up to number 885 in the queue review order, and so if your application's coming up, please be on the lookout for emails and outreach from the office to cure any deficiencies that you have. TPIs, make sure your TPIs folks have submitted their disclosures as well. Each application is different. The length of review time will vary from application to application, but your continued communication is what helps us get through this process faster. Before heading to our market update, I'd like to acknowledge last week's announcement from the DOJ recommending that cannabis be rescheduled as a Schedule III controlled substance. We talked about this at the CAB last week as well, earlier this week. This is going to be a timely process, but it's something that our office obviously is very much so interested in, and making sure that the impact on our program here is a positive one. Rescheduling does represent a seismic shift in cannabis policy across the country, one that we expect will reduce barriers for operators in the supply chain in terms of accessing capital and conducting research. But of course, we remain committed to a comprehensive solution like the one that we have here in New York that acknowledges the impact of prohibition. And so we're looking forward for those conversations to continue, and are optimistic that as a comprehensive solution comes out of those discussions. We're actively working on assessing program changes based on what we know and the current information available from the Fed at this time. Still a lot of details to be worked out, but we'll be in communication with licensees as soon as we have a better and clear understanding of what's happening next. Now I'd like to call up John Kagia to give our market update.
Thank you very much, Chris, Chair Wright, and to our board members. Thank you all for being here today. Maybe I'll actually start on that point about rescheduling and what it means for the pace at which the social transformation of cannabis and its place in our society is happening. It is almost hard to imagine how fast legalization has spread both across the states, and now there's a real conversation happening at the federal level. As Chris said, the federal reform is going to take a while to institute, But when we think about the seismic change that is happening with cannabis in the United States right now, there are both symbolic changes and substantive changes. And the announcement that the DEA is on the cusp of formally announcing the recommendation to reschedule cannabis to Schedule 3 is an enormously important symbolic step. It acknowledges that nearly 1/5 of Americans are consuming cannabis with some regularity. It acknowledges that over half of Americans have consumed cannabis at least once in their lifetime. And it recognizes that for a very long time now, the way in which prohibition has been enforced in most of our jurisdictions has been deeply inequitable. New York, I think, has taken an extraordinarily strong position in acknowledging the inequity of cannabis prohibition over much of the past century. That is reflected in the anchoring tenets of the MRTA, New York's cannabis law. And we hope that as this conversation continues to happen nationally, at state level, at the national level, that it is done with a clear understanding that the people who consume cannabis are, the people in this room, the very rich diversity of people in our communities. They are our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, and our colleagues. And through that lens, it's vitally important that the framework, both at the state level and at the national level, ensure that the opportunities to build a regulated cannabis economy in this country is done in a way that creates substantive opportunity for the very rich diversity of people who have benefit, who consume, and who seek to engage in all of the opportunity that this new industry is going to create. So it's a milestone moment. It is a symbolic one. I don't think we should go out and assume that this is going to happen anytime soon. The federal government still has a lot of work to do to get this over the finish line, but a very important symbolic change, and one which I'm glad that we have the opportunity to acknowledge. So this is the first market update since 420, and showing 420, which is, for those I hope most people know, is considered the high holiday of cannabis. Christmas, New Year's, and the 4th of July rolled into one, is a major event for the industry. And that was reflected in the numbers that we saw coming out of our April sales numbers. We actually got some additional numbers very late last evening that we've been updating. But we saw $41.6 million in sales for the month of April. It was actually the first time that we broke $40 million in a given month. We added $5 million in our sales. And that brings our year-to-date totals through the end of April to $142.5 million. Given that we did $160 million in all of last year, I used the word velocity quite a lot at our last board meeting, and that velocity continues. Year to date, since the program began, we have done $293 million in sales through our storefronts, added 10 million that we did through the Cannabis Grower Showcases last year, and officially we have finally broken the $300 million mark for the program. So very, very strong signals for where we're going. And worth calling out the weekly sales from 420, where we saw a very significant jump. When we convened just a month ago, I was excited that we were crossing $9 million a week in sales as our threshold. Well, the week of 420, we did $11.6 million in sales, and the week subsequent, which you tend to see a bit of a drawback in the week after 420. But the week after that, we still saw $10.5 million in sales. And based on the more recent data that we have coming in, we're now talking about pretty consistently 10.5 plus moving forward. So incredible reflection of the number of new stores that we're opening, of the number of new consumers who are walking into our stores. And so we continue to say to New Yorkers who are looking to consume cannabis, to consume safely, to consume responsibly, and to buy legal cannabis. So our 420 sales were 17%, a 17% increase week over week. But we saw actually a pretty widespread across individual retailers on how much that 420 bump was. And it's interesting because we've had so many stores who opened either in the week before or just 2 weeks before 420. A lot of these operators didn't really have the time to build that consumer engagement, to get out and get that word out. And so some stores had softer sales that week, other stores which really were focused on building that kind of consumer engagement and who had been in business for longer, so they had that runway, saw significantly higher performance. There's a few stores who saw nearly double their weekly sales that week. But a reflection of opportunities to drive consumers into the stores through consumer engagement. And so a quick point on that. We spoke about this at the Cannabis Advisory Board meeting earlier this week, but we are in the process of reviewing our packaging, labeling, marketing, and advertising rules. Now that we've had more than a year of retail data to look at, feedback from our retailers, feedback from the consumers who are purchasing from the market, and an ability to understand how our rules are implicating the market's performance, we have begun the process of reviewing and over the coming months we'll publish for consideration some amendments to our PLMA rules. We think that's going to be an important part of continuing to adapt our rules to reflect the realities in the market, and we're bullish to see these rules create additional opportunity to help consumers make the transition from the unregulated market to the legal one. And then just a final point about the quarter-over-quarter sales, where we've, from April alone, at 41.5 million in sales, we've almost done in a single month what we did in all of the third quarter last year. I don't mean to belabor the point that things are looking good, but when things are looking good, I think it's worth growing. So this is part of the reason why we're so keen to get more doors open, to get more legal consumers into stores. Because we know the demand is there, and we just need to make sure that consumers have access across the state. One of the questions we've been asked to look at was the scale of brand diversity in the market and how that has evolved. So we began doing a preliminary analysis on this, and we'll drill into this much more next week, but I wanted to present a high-level view of what we've seen and where we currently sit. So across all of the product types that we have in the market, we currently have 268 brands in the market. And there's two things that I thought were interesting as we were looking at this data. One is there's a rich diversity across different product forms. So there are 138 brands that are selling flower, 110 that are selling pre-rolls, 86 that are selling vapes, and 70 or less selling other product types. All of those categories have seen significant increases in the number of brands since we last did this presentation in the fall of last year. But another thing that we observed here is that there's growing specialization amongst the brands who are selling in the market. So most of the brands that we have, so we have 268, nearly half of them are only serving a single category. So you have 134 brands that are only in a single category. You have 96 that are doing 2 or 3 brands, and then you have 32 that are doing 3 or more brands. I actually think this is a really good reflection of the market as it builds out. Generally, new entrants will start in a single category, build their brand visibility, refine the processes, align with the regulations, figure out how to navigate the market before they expand out. We've certainly seen a lot of brands that started as flower-only brands getting into the value-added categories. And in those value-added categories, my observation is that they seem to be paying attention to what's moving and then trying to fill in some of the gaps that may be underserved. So some of the novel types of products we're now seeing in the market include dissolvable powders. We've seen quite a number of cannabis companies, of our licensees, come up with powders that you can mix in beverages and consume that way that are titrated. We're seeing aerosolized products, so oral sprays that are titrated almost the way that you'd use a cannabis asthma inhaler. And so these novel product forms reflect a growing understanding a growing level of innovation in the market. People are understanding how to leverage technology in the space to build these new products. But it's also aligning the product development with the market opportunity. Worth remembering, we've opened over 100 stores since the injunctions were lifted at the end of last year. And so in that time, as our producers are seeing more shelf space open up, more types of consumers coming into the space, it makes sense that they're starting to think about ways in which you can engage those consumers with new product forms. So in our next readout, we'll provide a more detailed walk through the makeup of who is selling what, and particularly, Madam Chair, you'd asked for an analysis on the state of play amongst the registered organizations. But broadly speaking, we've seen a really interesting expansion in product forms, as well as new brands that, through their branding, are creating differentiated positions in the marketplace. And then I wanted to include, as a final point, just a snapshot of the genetic diversity that we're seeing in the market on the next slide. When we last presented this, we said there were over 500 unique strains in the market. We're now at over 800. And again, I think this is a reflection of growers who've now had a year cycle to innovate the genetics. As we were looking at the data of the last few days, we saw a lot of crossbreeds, where two popular genetics were crossbred and introduced into the market as a new variant. And we expect that to continue to happen. Two notable points here. One is there is not a uniform number of genetics being used for different product forms. So there's 468 strains in flower, 347 for pre-rolls, and less than 200 for vapes and concentrates, respectively. Part of the reason for that, part of the reason why you're not seeing the same number of genetics being made available across the market, is we had a lot of growers who either grew specific genetics with the intention of using them for value-added products, so they were never intended to be sold as smokable flower. They were intended to be sold as vaporizers, or intended to be extracted and used in value-added products. So that's part of the explanation. But part of the explanation is also that because of the backlogs that we experienced due to the injunctions in getting our retail stores open, it meant that there were several growers who may have intended to have flower that was intended to be smokable product, flower pre-rolls, who ended up selling it for extraction as a way to both extend its shelf life as well as ensure that they could kind of maximize their return on that product before it expired. So I think we will see a bit of a drift in the distribution of our genetic diversity in the market as we get better kind of stability between production and retail sell-through. And that's going to happen with the velocity with which we're opening new stores. We're expecting, as we get through the rest of the year, that the turnaround between a plant coming out of the ground and it ending up on store shelves, that turnaround time will reduce substantially. But we do still have quite a lot of biomass inventory that we're going to be working through over the next few months. And critical to that work and critical to ensuring that our growers are able to recoup their investments is to get stores open as fast as possible. So I've been heartened by the discussion about additional resourcing. I think that's going to be critically important to enable that to happen. Two final quick points, just a slide on the distribution of our stores statewide. Again, this was another metric that we'd been asked to show. And on the next slide, I think you have a great kind of illustration of the regions across the state, the number of retail stores we now have in regions across the state. Roughly, we're evenly split between downstate and upstate. So Manhattan, the boroughs, and Long Island has 62. Upstate, we have about 60. And every state has roughly every region in the state has roughly 5 or more dispensaries now open. Obviously, this is just the beginning. We're trying to ensure that folks aren't going to have to travel too far to find legal regulated cannabis. But it has been heartening that with really very little manipulation from the office, folks have found spaces across the state and are building out to fill out the map. And we expect to see that continuing to as we move forward. As we think about kind of adult use licensing moving forward, it was really interesting to see from our applicant pool that our applicants were roughly split evenly between upstate and downstate. So that's part of the reason why we aren't levering or trying to drag people to open in one jurisdiction or another, or trying to weight it in one side or another. So we expect the natural distribution that accounts for an even balance between upstate and downstate to continue as we get deeper into our adult use licensing. A final point for our retailers as we look out to the rest of the second quarter going to the second half of the year. We're obviously going to have a very significant number of stores who are going to be looking to get open quickly. And so I think it's worth just kind of stressing some of the issues that have impacted how quickly stores have been able to open, particularly as you're getting to the latter stages of the pre-operational inspection. The pre-ops inspection is the last kind of final step before you're given the green light from the office to open your doors, but it is a critical step. And so in order to ensure that when we show up at your doors ready to do this inspection, or in the instances where we might be doing these virtually, in order to ensure that you don't end up having issues that could have been easily resolved beforehand, just wanted to flag a few issues that we found that have impacted folks' ability to open immediately after our walkthroughs. So first is security related. On video cameras, our policy says you've got to have 60 days of video footage retention, not 45, not 30. It needs to be 60, so work that out early with your vendors. 2, ensure that your cameras can see the entire facility. One thing that tends to happen is folks will do their site plan and then put furniture in front of where they'd install their cameras, so you end up having blocked views. Just, it's a simple fix, but ensuring that your surveillance apparatus has the ability to see the entire facility is critically important. 2, signage and the rules around signage. While we are going to be making some changes to our PLMA rules, we have not made them yet. So please read our rules and follow them. We certainly don't want you to be in a situation where there's something that is clearly articulated in our guidance on our signage rules that require you to either take down things or put things up at the 11th hour. 3, on inventory, our seed-to-sale system is coming. It's not up yet, but we do have an inventory reporting template. The compliance personnel that are working with you will prepare you for that. Please follow the instructions on how to populate submission forms and submit them to the office in a timely way. These data are absolutely critical, and it saves everyone a great deal of time if there isn't a great deal of back and forth with the office seeking clarification about what you have in stock and how much you've sold. A second, not pre-ops related specifically, but just kind of thinking about the run-up to your operationalization. Do start thinking about, long before you need to open, what kind of brands you want to carry, how much inventory you need to carry. Model that through, but we will caution, particularly now that our delinquency list is in play, do not over-order if you do not need to. Don't carry $300,000 worth of product if you only need 75 to get you through your first couple of weeks. Your suppliers are more than happy to keep coming back to restock you. And what you don't want to do is be in a position where you've ordered so much inventory that you now have some products that might be moving more slowly, but which you have to pay for within that 30-day requirement. Otherwise, you'll end up on the cash on delivery list. So manage your inventory even for your opening very carefully, and err on the side of caution if you need to. Speak to your retailers and confirm that if you need extra supplies, make sure they'll be able to bring them to you. But we strongly advise, given that we have seen overbuying get some folks in trouble out the gate, just kind of start low and go slow, like we say for every other aspect of this market. And then the final point, which is critically important, particularly as we get into the summertime rush. Do not schedule your opening before you have a confirmation on the timing of your pre-op inspection. We've had too many instances of folks emailing us at midnight the night before that they have press and local members of the community scheduled to come to ribbon cutting, telling us to be at their doors at 7 a.m. It doesn't work that way, folks. We are trying desperately to work with you and move as quickly as we can to get doors open. But particularly given the number of folks that are trying to get their doors open and how large the state is, the amount of ground we have to cover, please don't schedule this. Give yourself plenty of cushion to get open, because you really don't want to if your opening is a mission critical moment for you to make a big splash. You don't want to have to reschedule it at the 11th hour. You don't want to have to kind of invite your local lawmakers, your local community leaders to be there and tell them at the 11th hour that it's not going to happen. So don't schedule it until you've completed the pre-ops inspection period, and that way you're guaranteed that it'll be smooth sailing from there. So with that, I'll answer any questions the board might have.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Adam?
I think these are for John, but maybe for the executive director. Just very, very briefly, the executive director mentioned that after going over the equity numbers, that it's our central commitment. But isn't it in fact required by the law? I mean, we're following the law. These are legal requirements set forth in the statute that the office and the board has a legal obligation to implement by their letter. Isn't that right?
That is correct. I was pointing to the well. That is correct.
I know, Executive Director. I just want to make sure that people do not suggest that it's just something we feel strongly about. This is the law. Yes. And people who are listening, because I'm not sure even people who should understand it always get it, and I just want to be clear. Also, perhaps this is for John. At this point, we had some early on suggestions or projections that the maturity of the market, what the total would be. At this point, can you give us a rough idea of the top projected sales revenue of the entire market at maturity at whatever point you want to express that as?
Certainly. So there's obviously a lot of factors that will play into the outlook for the legal regulated market over the coming years. However, we'll say this. As it currently stands, New Yorkers are spending roughly $7 billion in the unregulated market. So this is a massive market, really second only to California in terms of scale and consumer demand. Two things happen as you make that transition from unregulated to legal. One, consumer spending tends to take up a little bit, partly because of the diversity of products that consumers start purchasing. So in the unregulated market, if you are primarily only a flower consumer with the breadth of options you have in the legal market, you might not you may now buy your flower and maybe a canned beverage or some gummies or oral sprays. So we expect that over the next 5 to 8 years, the legal market will be able to cannibalize most of that demand. Now, we have not yet seen a legal adult use market yet cannibalize 100% of the demand in a state. Colorado is about the closest we've got, and they're just over 90% now. And there's several reasons why you don't end up doing that full 100% capture. One is most states have opt-out regions, and so they're just some parts of the state where you're not able to get legal regulated cannabis. Two, there are some consumers who will continue to consume from or to purchase their cannabis either from people who they have very well-established relationships that grow the strain they want, and they're like, I've been buying this from this guy for 30 years, and he has what I like, so I'm going to keep getting it from that person. Or who are growing their own cannabis and tend to kind of supplement incrementally from the legal market, but don't ever fully transition all of their consumption to the legal market. And then third, there is a small subset of consumers who are concerned about things like the identification requirement.
And I really wasn't interested in a micro analysis. I just wanted to know the number because I know we have I don't want to monopolize the time. but you said that there's probably $7 billion total. So some subset of that at some point will get, I had heard $1.4 billion at some point, but it sounds like you're saying that at some point will exceed that.
At a minimum, I would expect within the next 5 to 7 years, the legal market will be doing at least $5 billion in sales.
Great, that's great. And also, I happen to think, I know it's crazy, but I often say that those who forget their history are condemned to repeat it, a saying that I made up. And or also, I say it also, those who don't know their history are unable to profit from it. Has anybody looked at the only other analog that I can figure out, which is the end of Prohibition, how long it took for the licensed, taxed, legal alcohol market in New York to reach a point where it dominated over the illegal market, illegal speakeasies, moonshining, and people just selling. Has anybody ever looked at that? Because my understanding from a variety of sources is that it took about 10 years. And that it wasn't like you end Prohibition, you issue licenses, and boom, the illegal market disappears. Is that what happens? Is that how this works?
So cannabis is a little bit different for a host of reasons. And partly it's just the timing. With Prohibition ending a century ago, just even things like the consumer awareness of the legal market and the pace at which the legal market grows, I think plays an important role in how quickly the transition happens. I will say that having kind of closely looked at a lot of other legal markets over the arc of their growth, you tend to see at about year 4 is when you cross that 50% mark, whereby generally around the 4th year post activation of the legal market is when you capture.
And I assume you know from data which you're well familiar with that no state that legalized had a disappearance or a reduction of anything substantial in the illegal market in the first, second, and third years. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's generally true.
Okay, good. So in other words, I'm just concerned and confused as to why some people in New York would suggest that the New York market would experience an evaporation of the illegal market, which didn't happen with alcohol prohibition, hasn't happened in any state where cannabis was legalized, and that it takes time and resources, and it can't be done with 30 law enforcement officers and blamed on one entity. But I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that the facts is that it takes time to reduce the illegal market. It's not like it's just going to disappear. And just a couple of other quick things. Somebody mentioned the rescheduling. And is that going to turn cannabis? Will all of a sudden cannabis be like cigarettes and soda pop? Like, anybody can get it and transfer it across state lines, and anybody can sell it, and it's a simple thing? Or is it going to be more like with the descheduling from Schedule 1? Is that going to turn it into something more like prescription drugs, which are highly regulated and need a prescription or other authorization approved by government before people can handle it? I've just seen commentary when people talk about rescheduling. All of a sudden, it sounds to me like they think you can drive a truck full of cannabis in your backyard across state lines.
So that's exactly right. And both points are right. One, that it does take time. It has taken time in every other jurisdiction to transition from the unregulated market to the legal market. And consumer education plays a really critically important point there. Two,
the only other thing I have, because I don't want to take up too much time, you can comment on anything else you want. I just want to know, for the office, there's been a lot of talk about how long it takes and that there's been extended times for certain applications, but this is all I want to know very specifically. What's the shortest time from submission of an application to the office granting an application that has occurred? If you have only one example or a group of examples, I don't want to hear the specific examples, but I want to know how long is the shortest time frame that can be generalized with regard to some applications from application to grant. What's the shortest time?
So I think the very fastest turnaround we've had maybe about 7 days.
Wait a minute. Wait
60
a minute,
days.
stop there. So it takes the state liquor authority 6 months generally. I understand they can do it faster under certain circumstances. But from application
forgive
to
me.
grant, we licenses in a week?
No, forgive me, Perry, Board Member Perry. It's 60 days is the average time it's taken us to get from opening, on average, across all of our licenses.
60 days, okay.
60
So
days.
anybody who's applied for a liquor license or knows who has, there's a general comment that it takes 6 months. Do we have a review of the state liquor authority to tell us why, for a product that's been legal and is in interstate commerce and has hundreds of employees and all of that stuff, why we can do some license despite a tidal wave of litigation and all these other issues, why we can, from application to grant, we can grant a license for this product that's still right now, because descheduling hasn't happened, classified by the federal government, just like heroin or crystal meth, that we can license one in 60 days and it takes them 6 months? Can somebody explain that to me?
Not here. Not ours.
I just want to know, I just want to understand.
May I just
I
ask for
really
a second,
like
Adam?
it.
I think that it's a little unfair for us to ask our office to assess what's happening in a different agency at this moment. And I don't know what the timelines are for them, but if we accept that this is the statement, your statement, and the veracity.
No, I'm not making a
veracity of
statement.
it, so
I just want to credit hard work, tell the truth, and understand that the statute requires equity and has other requirements in an unprecedented tidal wave of litigation, and that we deserve honesty about the background facts and what's been going on instead of a bunch of generalized criticism.
thank you.
And that's all
Okay.
I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah,
Just
I just
wanna
don't
be
want to
truthful
I just don't want to,
and honest
this is one of
and
their
accurate.
the agency partners. And so they're all sister agencies, and I don't want to set a stage where we're bickering with them and they're not here, because I think that we all end up working together and coming together every month, actually. So I just want to be fair and not paint them into a corner. But we do appreciate
I'm
the
not trying to paint
comments.
them into a corner. I'm trying to paint them out of a corner that it seems like some people are. I find that the office has made a commitment based on the legal requirements of following the statute in an unprecedentedly difficult circumstance, and is issuing licenses after a period of time of dealing with all these other unprecedented outside pressures. That the office is issuing licenses faster than agencies with hundreds of employees who've been around for 100 years licensing a legal product. So I am not trying to paint the staff into a corner. I'm doing the exact opposite. I want to understand why we have some of these criticisms that completely ignore these realities.
Point taken.
And maybe
I
it's a
think,
question the staff can and shouldn't answer right now, but somebody should be answering for that
Right.
question.
so.
I'd like to hear an answer. I don't think there is one. I just think it's criticism for criticism's sake without any understanding of the background facts.
And point taken. I think that I'm with you. I agree that this isn't something for the office to answer, but I do want to make sure that you have an opportunity to express your opinions regarding this. I just wanted to make clear that I didn't want them to feel compelled to respond. Sorry.
I just feel that it's something that's an obligation of board members and others of good conscience to say something about, and that's why I'm doing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I say one quick-
Yes.
So, John, thinking about the rescheduling at the federal level, it made me think about something that New York State did in the brewery industry that might be something that we want to look into, which is New York passed the New York Farm Brewery Law, which gave tax credits and incentives and did all sorts of advertising for breweries that source their product from New York State. So we know that this isn't going to change our industry immediately, but looking ahead and planning for the future, we might want to do something similar where we are incentivizing our dispensaries to source from processors and growers in New York State?
I think that's a great idea, and there's going to be two dimensions. This is going to take a while, and it's going to remain very tightly controlled, even if it moves to Schedule 3. So to Board Member Perry's question, this isn't going to become tomatoes overnight. It remains tightly controlled with many of the same kind of controls that would govern major pharmaceuticals. But two, it does create a lot of compelling opportunities for the industry to benefit from the faith and protections of the federal government. So the ability to participate fully in the banking system, which it's not able currently to do. The ability to participate in federally led programs, which the industry is not able to do. The ability to get crop insurance and other types of business or institutional support that the federal government helps protect, that most cannabis businesses aren't able to have access to. And the alleviation of the phenomenal tax burden through 280E that cannabis businesses are forced to endure. Those alone are going to be a major boost for our cannabis businesses' bottom line. But we certainly look forward to having a very robust discussion about other programs that we might be able to lever following this announcement to strengthen New York's legal cannabis market.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I would also just add, Board Member Gilbert Jenkins, as we go through this process, items also highlighted in the equity plan drafted by Damian Fagan and his team also highlighted what we could do to prepare our licensees for open market, including regional development, taking a mile after our EDCs and helping to concentrate like businesses and along the supply side so that they can pull resources, as well as custom identifiers, labels for New York products, outside of our warning label, similar to Taste of New York or other campaigns that we've seen from other state agencies.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you again for your reports, Chris and John. For our next order of business, we'll be providing members of the public with an opportunity to speak. Remember, we're not answering questions. You're limited to 2 minutes. I'll be calling names from this list. There are approximately 19 people on our list. You have 2 minutes. And where's our timekeeper? Can they come up here so that speakers are able to see them? And we will begin with Kevin Kaminker, followed by Brian McKenzie, then Chris Castellan? I'm sorry? All right, sorry about that. But yes, Kevin, Brian, then Chris. And you can just line up and speak from there. Our timekeeper will be in front of you so that they can give you cues on a lot of time. But please, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Kaminker. I'm part of a provisional license that was awarded a couple board meetings ago. I spoke before. I'm here again to just network, speak again, congratulating everyone today who got their licenses. I just want to bring up again, one of my team's main concern is the proximity protection map. Again, there's a lot of locations that are on the map that are not secured or controlled by the entity or applicant. So I know you guys are working really hard. Just want everyone to hear my voice so they know that they're not alone. I know I'm not the only one in this situation. There are people here that I've already spoke to. But besides that, I have friends who have opened up Williamsburg, Coney Island. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm gonna stay in Brooklyn. I wanna open in Brooklyn. And just a little better communication. I know the team is not big. There are a few members of the OCM who do respond in a timely manner, but again, time is of the essence. Already have my license for about 2 months, and I'm still hesitant to sign a lease because I don't know if that location is gonna be well or not. So there was a process before that I know CARD was able to present a location before they signed a lease, or at least the LOI. I know we could do a conditional lease, but landlords don't want to hear that. They want something concrete, and if there's going to be another way that we can know that that location would work, that would be great as well. But besides that, if not, we'll continue to work with the OCM, and hopefully my team and I will be able to invite everyone here to our grand opening. And good luck to everyone else as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, followed by Chris, and then Brian, I'm sorry. So Brian McKenzie, followed by Chris K, and then Brian Sealer.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian McKenzie. I'm also from Brooklyn. I don't have a license yet, but I do have proximity protection on the space that I submitted. And one thing that I would challenge, which I know you guys are working your best to do, is to be a little bit more transparent with the people that are applying for these licenses, as well as more communication. Too often when you email the OCM, all you get is a standard reply, and you can never get anyone on the phone to actually answer your questions. So from my perspective, I'm just asking for a little bit more transparency and communication, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, followed by Brian Sealer, and then Shane Matthews. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. My name is Chris Kostian from Misty Blue Farm. I want to kind of start and end with thank you to the board, the office, and particularly the staff members that answer the phone and answer the emails and all that kind of stuff. I know it doesn't always make it back to them. If any of them are watching, thank you for everything you do. We're a conditional cultivator that has transitioned to a micro-business license. We were awarded a license in the March meeting where you also made a motion to waive fees for conditional cultivators. And that was huge for every license type except one, the micro-business. We are currently kind of frozen in limbo because none of the computer systems know how to handle a fee waiver. So if somebody could tell us how that's going to get resolved, my retail location's probably going to be ready for me to schedule a inspection in about 3 weeks. So it would be nice to know where we go from here. And I have a check in the car if anybody can, just take it. It's good. Second is my second point is BioTrack. Cultivators were given an email a year ago that said, hey, listen, you are going to be required to use BioTrack in a certain period of time. I now spend $481 a month for BioTrack to be able to print an unlimited supply of my own little tags. A couple weeks ago, we got one that says, no, you got to buy $3 tags from BioTrack. And we also kind of found out that it's not going to really happen until September of this year anyway. So if we could just be consistent with BioTrack information and try not to make us spend money for no reason, that would be nice. And I'm going to finish with thank you again for all of this. It's a lot of work. You're, climbing a huge mountain. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Sealer, followed by Shane Matthews, then Sam Spawn. So Brian, thanks.
Hi, I'm Brian Seiler, representing Upstate Pines. We're looking to do a retail in the Hudson Valley. I got a lot of clarity here today, though. You guys told us where you were on the queue and that we're all going to be reviewed from that November. I mean, we've been holding our lease for over 6 months now. We got a building permit from the town, and it took a lot, small town, to get that building permit. We just want our proximity. We're hoping to lock it in, good location. We already have our lease, but after seeing where you are on the queue, I think it's coming. So thanks for the clarity here today. I know it's tough. A lot of people, not a lot of you guys. So thank you so much. I hope we hear from you guys soon.
Thank you. Shane Matthews, followed by Sam Spawn, and then Patrick Nolan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Shane Matthews, and I'm the owner of Greenhull Solutions. We're a cannabis and hemp sampling firm. I'm also a founding board member of the New York Association of Cannabis Sampling Professionals, a nonprofit 501c3 corporation for the representation of cannabis sampling technicians. Currently, we're connected to over 80 independent sampling technicians in 5 firms throughout the state. As we all work together to move the industry forward, I can't overstate the importance of building trust in our supply chain. Trust is the bedrock that underpins a successfully regulated market. It's also the reason why consumers will travel further and pay more for their legal product. To that point, the requirement for independent third-party sampling technicians is the type of unique regulation that should be both leveraged and advertised. As cannabis sampling professionals, we are 100% dedicated to the integrity of the marketplace. In fact, we've all signed legal commitments to honesty and transparency. Excuse me. Recognizing that we could individually be held criminally liable for dereliction of duty. To put it colloquially, we have no horse in this race other than the health and sustainable growth of our industry. With that said, I ask you to be reminded of the robust tool that is our group of unbiased professionals, and to creatively leverage us in building marketplace trust. The New York Association of Cannabis Sampling Professionals is in preliminary contact with the OCM Labs Group, and we look forward to collaborating with our OCM partners in building a brighter future for all of us. Please direct any correspondence to board@nyacsp.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Spawn, followed by Patrick Nolan, then Kamal Jamal.
Hi, I'm Sam Spoon with SGM Handicraft Cannabis Company, and I signed up earlier this week to make a public comment about more transparency in the queue and everything, and I got that today, so I'm very happy about that. You know, I was number 800 in the November queue, and I've been contacted by the OCM and with some deficiencies, and the emails were actually very quick, and I got all my deficiencies done in one day with about 6 or 7 back and forth emails. So I am very, very happy for that. So thank you. You know, so I just would like to thank the Cannabis Control Board, the OCM, and to Joe Rossi of Product Strategies. He has helped me tremendously, and a lot of other micro business applicants, you know, treading the water here. So thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Nolan, Kamal Jamal, and Charles Robinson.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Knoll. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tanglewood Distribution. We're number 15 in the queue from December. I'm also a founding member of the New York State Cannabis Distributors Association. And as somebody who's only interested in distribution, I have a background in logistics. It's felt a lot like there's, you know, that distribution's become like the stepchild of the whole process, where cultivators and processors are getting what we thought were limited licenses, and then there's conversions happening to perhaps permanent unrestricted licenses. Then we hear something, you know, there's very little communication coming in the distribution channel. You know, we'd love to know, you know, how many distro licenses are going to be going out to those cultivators and processors. You know, will they be limited? Will they expire? We have no idea. You know, we were notified on March 30th that we were in review. We cured all deficiencies by April 1st. By April 4th, we had our fingerprints submitted, and we were confirmed with OCM by email that nothing was missing and that our application was complete. I'm not sure what the process is inside the office of how these things get pulled out of the pile. But what I can say, and I understand that the queue doesn't indicate the order in which the licenses will go out, but I've had a lot of people congratulate me on finishing number 15, and everything that I've heard since doesn't really award much value to that if they're going to be coming out in any order. Numbers 13, 14, and 16 all got licenses. And we'd like to know what the reason is that we were not included in today's agenda. You know, is there a legal reference, you know, for giving that preference to those other applicants? And what can we do? You know, what are the, you know, how are the applications selected for the agenda? How are the applications selected for the agenda? That's something that we'd love to know. But again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Kamal, and then we'll be followed by Charles Robinson, and then Matthew Robinson.
Thank you for your time. My name is Kamal Jamal from Beacon, New York. I'm 463 Station. We were number 574. We received the proximity protection. they asked us to submit our TPIs and fingerprints. We did that, and we received emails stating that everything was good and ready. We later noticed that our name was knocked off the proximity protection and granted to a micro business, which doesn't have a storefront, nor does it have a place to do business. Another micro down the street from us got an approval that their building is for sale. So my question is, how are these properties getting the protection when buildings are for sale and landlords are applying with no storefront when they can write their own lease? We own our property. We wrote our own lease because it's our property. Later, when we got knocked off, the city we're in went out and asked for a public convenience, and we started the process with the OCM for public convenience for our location. And then we got a welcome packet an email welcome packet, and we started doing our work and putting our cameras in to get open in timely manner, only to receive another email stating that it was sent in error. So for 2 years now, we've been getting crumbs of the cookie and building based on that. And we're bleeding right now for 2 years, and we really need to be, some better answers to what steps happen next. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Charles Robinson, followed by Matthew Robinson, then Reggie Keith.
Yes, Charles Robinson, hold up, roll up. I started this process 3 years ago. When I first started this process, I thought it was going to be expedient. I didn't understand what was happening at that time period, but I stayed in there. As hard as it was, I stayed in there. But I came here today to commend this board. I wouldn't want to switch places with y'all. The pressure that's on y'all right now, I don't think everybody feels as though they are entitled. But yet, no, when this whole program was first announced 3 years ago, it was only very limited people that applied. I went around trying to explain people what was actually going on in real time, and they looking at me and calling me crazy, saying it's not going to happen. But I believe it's going to happen. And I believed in this board. That there was times I didn't believe in this board, but I understood when just reading the articles that I was reading and the backlash that y'all was getting, I was just saying to myself, that's not fair. I came here today to commend y'all because I understand that political favors are in play right now to ostracize y'all, and y'all doing a great job. Keep up the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Robinson, followed by Reggie Keith, then Ian Burke.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Some of you know me, some of you don't. First, I want to start off by saying thank you to the board, to everybody. I've supported you from day one. I will continue to support you. I don't care what anybody says. I know you guys are working your hardest, and there's nobody better suited to do this than what we have right here. I read an article as well. Chris, I don't want you to step down. Nobody wants you to step down. I don't care what anybody says, man. That's your decision if you decide to. But we want you here. Legacy Dispensary, most of the dispensaries that I know support you. The cultivators, they support you. They stand behind you. You got back, and we support you, behind you 100%. It's an atrocity to have someone, a group of people, start something so hard, open up over 100 dispensaries, 300, almost 300 cultivators, almost 50 processors. And because they did a good job, they get in trouble, or they want you to step down. That's just wrong. Could you imagine starting a business, any of you, and getting so far and building all the way up, and then when you finally get there, they say, we need you to step down? How disrespectful is that? That is disrespectful. I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you very much. Chris, you have my support, and everybody on my team support. So thank you.
Reggie Keith, followed by Ian Burke, followed by David Miller.
Hello, everybody. I don't know how I follow that. But shout out to the board as well. Everybody here, thank you for showing up, being consistent. My name is Reggie Keith. For those who don't know, I actually am the founder of Cannabis. And today, I'm super ecstatic to announce that we are actually, as of today, a licensed micro business. So, yeah, I just want to give some encouragement to all of my fellow applicants. Man, I know how hard it is. I know we broke. we all struggling, trying to pay the bills. Stay fast at it. Stay with it, man. Stay committed. Keep your shit aligned. Make sure you got your things in order so when your time is called, you're ready to actually answer that call. So I just want to send some encouragement. Also to the board, I know that's been a sentiment that's been shared here, but I also want to make sure that I recognize, I've been in front of you guys a ton of times. I've asked a lot of difficult questions. And I want to applaud you guys for always standing there, whether you had the right answer or not, for being there and being able to say something, right? And so I respect that. I respect you guys consistently working hard. It doesn't always prove to be what we want on our end, but that's how shit works sometimes, right? Everybody isn't going to get exactly what they want, and they say that's the sign of a good deal. Right, and so I appreciate that. I also want to take the time out to thank my team. Everybody that supported me. Shout out to Chris. Shout out to Damien, man. Hold your head, man. We support you as well. I want to make sure we show that love. Big shout out to Crystal People Stokes. Again, I'm from Buffalo, New York, so big shout out to Majority Leader. Dashita Dawson is in the building. If y'all don't know, Big Dashita's here. And shout out to my team, my brother Rich Keefe, Valentino Shine, my wife Naz. Our parents, man, we really had a huge support system help us get to this day, and it would be remiss for me to sit here and stand here and be congratulatory to myself without recognizing my team. So shout out to everybody, Brandy Hester Harrell as well. I know she's watching. She's been a big help to us. So again, everybody hold your head, man. I know it's tough, but we got this. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Ian Burke, followed by David Miller, then Shanduke McFadder.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Burke. For those who don't know me, I'm an Albany resident, born and raised in Albany, went to Albany Academy, so New York through and through. I'm the owner and founder of Chronic Cannabis Company. We've been in business doing everything around the lifestyle of cannabis for about 4 years now. Now it's 2024. And I'm just gearing to open up for when the legal market came to fruition. And so right now we have applied for the card program in 2022. We did not receive a card license, unfortunately, with the aspiration of applying for the next round opening. And we currently have a building situated, a lease on Central Avenue in the Albany area as well. But since we've signed the lease and submitted our application, we have not heard much or anything back from the state or the Office of Cannabis Management on the status of our application or just clarity on if we need to do anything going forward. So I'm just here today to kind of just ask the board. First, I was thank you for the board for allowing me to speak, and congratulations on all the progress that you guys have made so far in this program. I just am asking today, on behalf of all the other leaseholders throughout the state and ourselves, just for more clarity on what's going on in the process. I know you guys announced that you're up to 800 plus through the queue, and we're coming up very soon, so we're happy to hear that. But just want more clarity and communication with people who are shoveling out thousands of dollars a month on lease spaces, and we're all small businesses and all that. So just a little more clarity going forward. And again, congratulations on all the progress. And you guys have been working very hard, going along with what Matt was saying. It's definitely, you guys have faced a lot of unfair ridicule throughout the years going forward, but congratulations on all the progress, and thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. David Miller, followed by Shanduke McFadder, then Mark Donahue.
I'm going to reiterate the same questions that I had at OCM this past Tuesday in Buffalo. What's it going to take for OCM and the CCB to start designating medical dispensaries competent and capable of dealing with veterans with the compassion and expertise that we need for cannabis? Cannabis has over 500 interactions with psychotropic medications, with all types of other kinds of different classifications of pharmaceuticals. I'm a member of EVAC 3, educating veterans about cannabis. We are in the largest change in prescription patterns in
modern medical history. No one is getting opioids like we did 10 years ago. So veterans with peripheral neuropathy, with phantom limb pain, with chronic pain management issues have one place to turn, that's cannabis. And I'm telling you again, we can't afford it. We are living below, most of us who are very disabled are living below the poverty line. That is not going to be addressed by Biden, Trump, or God. And we can't afford cannabis, even though OCM and CCB have all said that we're a priority. It doesn't take 2 years for the leadership of these organizations to sit down with the VFW, with the American Legion, with Team Rubicon, with TAPS, with the Iraq and Afghan Veterans of America, and start trying to figure out solutions. But that's not happening. None of the medical dispensaries have psychiatrists, psychologists, training, not even a damn brochure. And I need you to do better. You've gotten more than enough praise sang to you today. Thank you for doing your job. Thank you for doing your job. Now, please help AVAC and EVAC 3 and all the other organizations involved with veterans issues save some of our lives.
Thank you. Shanduke McFadder, followed by Mark Donahue, then Mark Robinson.
Just wanted a moment of silence for the black men and women that won't be here, it's not here, that died because of the laws that were before. My name is Shanduke McFadder. I'm the CEO and founder of a 501c3 nonprofit known as GMAC in Brooklyn, aka Gangsters Making Astronomical Community Changes, that has been fighting for years to change the community, including lobbying before people even thinking about fighting for just involved people to have an opportunity in cannabis. People think it just happened. Somebody had to fight. There were people who fought for that. Here it is, 500 something plus days since I submitted my application. Justice Involved black man, born and raised in Brooklyn, with a Justice Involved nonprofit, when they said they were giving out 25 licenses to nonprofits. It's been since November 2022 since I have had an update. We're in April. I went through Verisight, the veterans. When OCM agreed to settle and put Card aside, I was extremely quiet and still held patient and respectful. Now we're going through the November queue, and we're talking about even going to another 1,500 applicants. Where's my license? That's my question. And we're not going to point the finger at the black man or the black woman. We're not going to do that. We're going to point the finger at the lobbyists who paying the people behind the scenes to try to forget about Card. What about the MRTA? What about handling the rights of the past? I'm not even going to pay attention to that time, but I'm going to leave respectfully. What about righting the wrongs of the past? Is that not why we passed the MRTA? So why am I still standing here? I go to Jersey, and there's people in Jersey who applied in November queue is telling me they've been licensed in Brooklyn, and I'm still waiting. Something has to change, and we need to hold the governor accountable to bring Card back. How do we now put out denials, but forget about the people like me? Jason, his wife Brittany, I'm also a board member of the New York Cannabis Retail Association, and we've been fighting since this happened, since this started, for some type of answers in response to transparency. Enough is enough. We need some change, and I need to know, where's my license?
Thank you very much. Mark Donahue, followed by Mark Robinson, then Jackie Robinson.
Thank you for having me aboard. My name is Mark Donahue. I'm a local resident for the past 40 years, registered nurse in the community. After that last speech, though, just for a quick moment, as one of the other gentlemen who's not a C applicant but does hold a license, there's a reason why other people are prioritized, and we do respect that. Anybody who's actually lived this lifestyle understands some of us got to skate through a little bit easier. So respect where that is for those reasons. To my issue directly, I'm a micro business license holder. I noticed in regulation 2024-75, which you were, Madam Chair, mentioning how you feel like you're aligning with the folks with this. One thing that I think is underserved right now is the micro business population. I would like to see other things such as a pathway to establish a new retail location if you were initially not allowed for it, but approved for your micro business. As part of our plan as we move forward, it's very limiting to not have that, at least as a viable option, to articulate a pathway forward and do those other things. I'm going to leave it simply at that. I know a lot of other people have higher priorities, but a little bit of attention to that matter would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mark Robinson, followed by Jackie Robinson, then Deshita Dawson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Christopher Alexander, and the member of the boards. Madam Chair, first of all, I'd like to say that my younger brother Stevie was not here today. He wanted just to make sure I tell you hi. You know, he's a little under the weather. So, but normally when I come scripted because I know that it's a 2-minute time limit, and I try to get my point across as far as the frustrations of, you know, of just being in a space where it's not a secret to what have took place with my family during this war on drugs through cannabis prohibition. I mean, I'm at a place today where I was told from the board, just believe in the process. I am an elected official. I'm a county legislator for the County of Albany. I did a term on city council, so I know legislation. When the MRTA came out, and may my father rest in peace, but I had a conversation with my dad, like, yo, Dad, the trajectory is finna change, you know, because, you know, I believe that I know interpretation. I know that when I read something, I mean, I can interpret it well. So through that act, it says that, you know, the whole design of the act was the right, the wrong of the past. And the first round came, my family wasn't called. The second round came, my family wasn't called. The third round came, God has blessed us with not 1 license, but 2 licenses. Okay? But during that process, man, not even just talking about what strain have it took on my family emotionally, but financially, we at our wits' end. Blessed that hold up, roll up, you know what I'm saying? They opened their doors. But Robinson's Cannabis Flowers, the municipality, navigating the municipality was very, very rough. And if it wasn't for an explosion from a building that was across the street from where we located, I believe that our application to try to get a certificate of occupation would still be on that desk.
I'm sorry. I have to.
Now that
Mr. Robinson.
now that you know the municipality did grant us our certificate of occupation, OCM has not yet to respond to come and do their virtual inspection. This is 3 months after 3 years. I mean, I'm just saying,
So,
I thank
I
you,
hear
I
you.
thank you, I
Thank
thank
you.
you, I thank you. And I do apologize for going over the time limit.
Thank you very much. Jackie Robinson, followed by Deshita Dawson, followed by Cassandra Frederick.
Good afternoon. My voice is a little bit raspy right now. First of all, I want to thank the board. I want to thank the state for allowing Black people to be in a business that they ran for many years. But now I don't know how the state can continue to not, it's just hard for people to navigate through your process. When we got the card, you handed it to us with no direction. You asked us to secure a building. We secured a building. Rent is not cheap. Commercial rent is not cheap. All we're saying is the process needs to be, and I understand what the gentleman said about the liquor license. It takes more than 6 months. But for the people that you're giving an opportunity, 6 months of rent is a very long time to pay when we're not big businesses. We are just people that want to continue to make a better life for future generations to come. So like I said, I commend you. I know this has got to be the hardest job, especially dealing with the different entities that are involved, the entities that want to take and, like I said, 5 years ago would put me in prison. But now you want to come in and you want to take the fruits of everybody's hurt and tell us we're not worthy. We're not worthy of anything. We have to wait for the state to give us money, our community's monies. But if we can take and just say, okay, we gave them an opportunity, let's let them go forward. Let's see what they're about. Just, I don't know. Like I said, I commend you. I wouldn't want to be in your position. Thank you.
Deshita Dawson, followed by Cassandra Frederick, our last speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Deshita Dawson, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and cannabis equity leaders and regulators who have actually done this work across the country. Thank you. Thank you to Chris Alexander, and the Office of Cannabis Management for attempting to hold the line on the historic efforts that you set out to do here in New York. As I said before, we've never seen what social equity actually looks like in America if we define it as fairness and regulation and policy to ensure that all people have an equitable and equal opportunity to economic and environmental and human equity. And as I've worked in nearly every legal market as a highly sought after business strategist and legacy market consumer, I am an expert in weed market dynamics. It has been incredibly disheartening to see so many missteps, largely due to not understanding the cannabis industry, ranging from the governor's social equity fund managed through DASNY, poor defense of the MRTA, and private equity winning over social equity in the discussions about the OCM's effectiveness. What happened to upholding equity from day one? What happened to following the law? There is a difference between operationalizing licenses and issuing licenses. New York has more than 300 provisional card licensees still working to get investment and real estate. People who applied under this program under the impression that Governor Hochul's Social Equity Fund would support that effort. Now, as these folks finally have the lawsuits behind them and the runway to move forward, New York State wants to change the priority to focus on thousands of new applicants, many of which who are far more resourced and clearly lobbying on behalf of themselves. We are already seeing the deterioration of investment deals. Yes, we can actually put valuation on a license alone. In New York City, that ranges from 1.5 million to 3 million. I know because I've been doing this work. And unfortunately, we do not have a plan to actually support many of the card licenses that have come before us. And so I asked, what is the plan for not doing further harm to this group that we know have been most harmed? What is the governor's plan to ensure that us starting from day one with equity and the work that OCM has been doing will continue even after we are reviewing all 1,500 licenses in the November queue? I think New York City, again, is really critical to ensuring that we see this through. We are obviously here to support, but as a person who grew up in East New York, I'm a bit ashamed at how we've cast aside the very people that we propped up to celebrate our historic wins. Thank you.
Thank you. Frederick.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Frederick. I'm the Executive Director of Drug Policy Alliance. I'm also the person that ran the campaign to legalize cannabis for the last 12 years in New York State. I'm a born and bred New Yorker, first generation Haitian American, And I'm deeply, deeply, deeply disappointed in the conversation here today about how this industry is rolling out. I am deeply disappointed because part of the reason why we created the control board was to protect it from the whims of a governor. It was supposed to be an independent body that was not supposed to be swayed by business interests or by the politics of the legislature or the governor. And it has been months where I have not at all spoken about cannabis in New York because I thought that the infrastructure that was put in the MRTA would hold. And what we have seen today is that not only was the impetus for the MRTA, which was focused on repairing the harms of the drug war that we fought for, to basically dismantle the policing infrastructure of harassing, targeting, stigmatizing, incarcerating Black and brown New Yorkers, where the arrest rates have gone down to 98% from when we first started. They were supposed to be first. And Dr. Jenkins, I hear you on the idea of meeting the demand and why we need to open up the licenses so that we can meet the demand, but that cannot come at the expense of the people that met the demand of this carceral system in this state. Because they had no problem filling all those cages. They had no problem with that. But now they have a problem with the patience of actually creating an industry that is set up for the people that were targeted. And now we are at this moment where it is lobbyists who are running the system here. It is not the people. Those lawsuits didn't come out of nowhere. That was coordinated. And we have not protected people. And then people want to ask why folks of color do not stand up to be in these positions as elected officials, as progressive prosecutors, as leading the industry. It's because we get set up. And then they cut our heads off in public. And that is what is happening to the OCM. It is not lost on me that for the first time we have Black leadership at the legislature, Black leadership and mayors, progressive prosecutors, and now in leading the cannabis industry. And that is when we are using lawsuits. We are having all these whisper campaigns. We're changing the goalposts. And the Cannabis Board was supposed to be independent to make sure to protect the intentions of the work. We wrote the law for you to protect this. And that is not what's happening. It is disappointing. Because when there are people, before you start, Tremaine, before there are people who are in this room, I was on the streets with a lot of people working to end the arrests, working to stop people getting their kids taken away, figuring out how people can be repatriated back to the US because people were getting deported. The industry was the cherry on top. And now we have only figured out ways to continue criminalization and to subjugate the same people we were supposed to help, to make sure to use Black faces as a way to make white money. Welcome back.
Thank you. So we want to thank everyone that stayed with us today, everyone that has taken time to talk with us and to share their comments. We always appreciate it, and we appreciate everyone that shared with us today. So please note that the time, the location, and the live stream link will be shared on cannabis.ny.gov in advance of our next Cannabis Control Board meeting. A recording of today's meeting, the meeting minutes, and a transcription will be posted as well. This concludes our business for today. May I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. If there are no questions, comments, or discussion by the board members?
They're gone.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. Shall we adjourn? Aye. Motion to adjourn this meeting carries. Thank you.